Tucker Carlson has broken his silence, and the Pentagon and Department of Defense are cheering his departure. Is it good that the mainstream media has cleansed itself of an anti-war voice? Where will opposition to mainstream objectives come from now? Hello there, you 6.4 million awakening wonders. Thanks for joining me on this voyage to truth and freedom. Click the notification bell and subscribe to our channel right now. It's the only way we can ensure that we will remain in direct contact with you. We're going to be having a look at Tucker Carlson's video response to the events around Fox News and his departure, focusing in particular on the anti-war rhetoric that Tucker Carlson regularly deployed. Now, of course, a lot of people on the left, centre left, I'd call them the neoliberal establishment, are attacking Tucker Carlson. But where else are anti-war voices going to come from? Why did Fox News get rid of Tucker Carlson? Where will Tucker Carlson go to next? And where does radical opposition to the establishment agenda come from if anybody who speaks out against the agenda is one way or another cleansed from the system? Did you see the White House press dinner? What a cozy little jamboree with Joe Biden joking about the free press and how the press and the establishment have to work together. You better believe they work together.
The free press is a pillar, maybe the pillar of free society.
How can you have an establishment and press working together to keep ordinary people ignorant and bewildered and claim that it's anything like a free country with free comms? Voices that attack the establishment, that attack the deep state, that attack the corporatization of America and indeed the world are necessary at this time. That's why Julian Assange is in prison. That's why Edward Snowden's in Russia. And that's why Tucker Carlson's no longer on Fox News, even though I disagree with Tucker Carlson about a bunch of stuff. Let's have a look at his video.
One of the first things you realize when you step outside the noise for a few days is how many genuinely nice people there are in this country. Kind and decent people, people who really care about what's true, and a bunch of hilarious people also, a lot of those. It's got to be the majority of the population, even now. So that's heartening.
One of the things that I like about Tucker Carlson is he's a kind of frequency jam. The way he has those conversations with political figures where he's like, oh, okay, oh, all right. He's a difficult person to contend with, I imagine. And one of the things that surprises me is that people that oppose Tucker on cultural issues aren't willing to see that when it comes to things like the criticism of the war, the willingness to attack the establishment, the critiques of the military-industrial complex, the ongoing attacks of the deep state, that these are exactly the arguments of what was once known as the radical left just 20 years ago. Cast your mind back to the late 60s or the early 70s, the countercultural movement, the civil rights movement, Black Panthers, women's movement. You wouldn't find the radical left on the same side as like the Department of Defense and the CIA going, we've got to get rid of that guy. The attacks on radical anti-establishment voices often use the technique of saying, oh, you're far right now. But if we're far right for agreeing that the establishment needs to be took to task, then what have they become if they're on the same side as the Department of Defense or the Pentagon or the world's biggest corporations? What's happened to them?
The other thing you notice when you take a little time off is how unbelievably stupid most of the debates you see on television are. They're completely irrelevant. They mean nothing. In 5 years, we won't even remember that we had them. Trust me, as someone who's participated.
So it seems to be that Tucker Carlson primarily is attacking the mainstream media and obviously in particular his former employers, Fox. Those of us that were observing Tucker Carlson personally felt that he was getting disillusioned with the limitations of operating within a mainstream space. And it's interesting to observe, isn't it? And let me know what you think in the chat and the comments, that if you go on the TV and attack the war machine, attack the deep state, attack the mainstream media, attack the two-party system, that in the end you will be excluded. It makes you wonder how much control Rupert Murdoch has over Fox and how much it is a reflection of his own ideology. I used to think, well, maybe they don't care what anyone says as long as it's generating views and revenue and money and power. Like having me on there, it's like they don't care if I'm anti-establishment. They just think, who gives a shit what that little limey's saying? But now I'm starting to think, oh wow, there's the potential that voices like ours, voices like yours, can really make a difference.
And yet at the same time, and this is the amazing thing, the undeniably big topics, the ones that will define our future, get virtually no discussion at all. War, civil liberties, emerging science, demographic change, corporate power, natural resources.
I would say that those are very important subjects, perhaps the most important subjects. Demographic change is, of course, the subject that people say suggests that Tucker Carlson is talking about race and the balance between different races in America and stuff like that. Personally, I feel that alliances between cultural groups that are not operating in the top tiers of the establishment is an absolute priority, and I wouldn't participate in the promotion of any ideas that turn people of different cultures, colours, races, ideologies against one another. Me personally, that's not the way to go. But when it comes to the debate around war, when have you seen in the mainstream media a reasoned debate about trying to pursue a diplomatic solution?
Debates like that are not permitted in American media. Both political parties and their donors have reached consensus on what benefits them, and they actively collude to shut down any conversation about it. Suddenly, the United States looks very much like a one-party state.
That's exactly what Noam Chomsky is saying as well, that there is more censorship in your country, America, than there is in Russia. Noam Chomsky, about as far left as it's possible to go without it becoming, I don't know, it's not an angle anymore. You'd go back round to the right, which is what a lot of people are saying, obviously. Let me know in the chat and the comments if you think that Tucker and Chomsky are right.
That's a depressing realization, but it's not permanent. Our current orthodoxies won't last. They're brain dead. Nobody actually believes them. Hardly anyone's life is improved by them.
If you look at that White House press conference dinner and you see Joe Biden demanding that American journalists be released from prison, while you know that Snowden is in exile in Russia, while you know that Julian Assange is rotting away in prison, essentially waiting to be exiled or executed, you know that what you're watching is theatre. That Tucker Carlson is right. The orthodoxies are dead and brain dead, bereft of ideas. All they are is the advocates and managerial classes stewarding the agenda of the corporate elites. There's no original ideas coming from there. That's why they have to agitate us into a state of constant friction around cultural issues, just so that there is some febrility, just so there's some energy around it. New ideas will come from new alliances. New ideas will come from new conversations. The old orthodoxies are indeed dead.
This moment is too inherently ridiculous to continue, and so it won't. The people in charge know this. That's why they're hysterical and aggressive. They're afraid. They've given up persuasion. They're resorting to force. But it won't work. When honest people say what's true, calmly and without embarrassment, they become powerful. At the same time, the liars who've been trying to silence them shrink, and they become weaker. That's the iron law of the universe. True things prevail. Where can you still find Americans saying true things? There aren't many places left, but there are some, and that's enough. As long as you can hear the words, there is hope. See you soon.
Let's pause there for a moment and see what these guys who keep the lights on have to say. And it's in the form of me. Hello there, you awakening wonders. Today's show is brought to you by Manscaped, who are the best in men's below the waist and below the snout and within the ear grooming. Their products are precision engineered tools like our analysis for your family jewels. Manscaped's performance package is the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. You get the lawnmower. This trimmer is the future of grooming, and some say the greatest ball trimmer ever. You get the Weed Whacker crop preserver ball deodorant, although if there is an odour, I mean, there just shouldn't be an odour on your balls. But if there is, this will rid you of it. The Crop Reviver toner, performance boxer briefs, and a travel bag to hold your goodies. In this case, the goodies are the products, not your reproductive organs. Join over 7 million men worldwide, not literally, that would be unhygienic, you'd be ankle deep in pubic hair, who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code BRAND at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use the code BRAND. Oh, it's really actually quite satisfying because you can hear it. Can you hear that? That's the sound of youth returning. One thing to note is that the Department of Defense and the Pentagon are very pleased about Tucker Carlson's departure. At the upper levels of the Department of Defense, news of Carlson's firing from Fox News Monday was met with delight and outright glee in some corners. We're a better country without him bagging on our military every night in front of hundreds of thousands of people, said one senior DoD official. I would say that a bigger problem for the military are the fact that 50% of their budget goes directly to private military contractors like Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Martin, etc., and members of the military are significantly likely to end up homeless, are unlikely to be able to afford their own shelter, and in significant numbers are using food stamps. These things are all true. Much easier to blame Tucker Carlson for bagging on the military rather than acknowledging that the military are always used as heroes when convenient, but are discarded whenever necessary. What people are suggesting is that the fact that 50% of military budgets end up in the hands of the Pentagon, that $1,000 a year from average Americans is ending up in the hands of the MI6, check those figures, I'm afraid it's true, is not the best way to direct the finances of a country in crisis. The following is from the American Prospect, a left-leaning publication who are willing to examine Tucker Carlson from a more interesting perspective rather than saying, oh, I don't like him. Carlson's insistent distrust of his powerful guests acts as a solvent to authority, frequently making larger-than-life figures of the political establishment defend arguments they otherwise treat as self-evident. Tucker's willingness to challenge and mock ruling elites went alongside an obsessively nativist message that alienated viewers who might otherwise have embraced his populist perspective. That's one of the aspects of Tucker Carlson that I would query as a person that believes that alliances between different cultural groups are necessary to displace establishment power. His popularity with a wide audience begs the question why other nightly news shows that attacked him didn't raise the same critiques without the nativism. And the answer to that is, of course, because they ultimately support the establishment and are unwilling to advance arguments that attack establishment power. They're only willing to talk about, I would say, peripheral issues which may be important but will not attack the Death Star, the heart of the machine, the MI6, financial interests, the deep state. Tucker Carlson went there. So even if you don't like him, you have to acknowledge that. Let me know in the comments in the chat if you agree or if you think I'm missing something. One answer is that Tucker Carlson tonight was an outlier in corporate-owned cable news, which is typically hostile to independent critiques of executives and political elites. The show declined to play the gatekeeping role that many of Carlson's detractors demand of mainstream media platforms. Carlson hosted heads of state in the same week as fringe characters of both the far left and far right. He tapped into populist insights, cutting through left and right-wing echo chambers and put in hard questions to corporate executives and members of the political establishment. Though Carlson spent years as a staunch libertarian, he made a populist turn around the time of Trump's election, rejecting many of the free market doctrines he'd previously espoused. Republican leaders will have to acknowledge that market capitalism is not a religion. Market capitalism is a tool, like a staple gun or a toaster. You'd have to be a fool to worship it, Tucker said in a typical segment. Our system was created by human beings for the benefit of human beings. We do not exist to serve markets, just the opposite. What even that critique reveals is that Tucker Carlson is aware that free market ideology is beyond just economic utility and is being used to advance a particular agenda that benefits a particular strata of society and that is deleterious to the values of the majority of people. And that we need new principles and new values, or perhaps traditional old ones, to be at the core of our belief systems. Without that, we have apathy and inertia in one portion of the culture and a very insidious, invisible ideology making sharp incisions throughout the body of the rest of the state. That passage of his monologue could have been lifted from a stump speech by Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders, progressive senators whose views on economic policy Carlson has at times echoed. Carlson often hosted segments focused on big tech with guests calling for the breakup of Silicon Valley giants and increased antitrust enforcement. He's been a frequent critic of trade policies that offshore jobs, a position that's found an unlikely ally in the Biden administration. His 2019 story on how hedge fund manager Paul Singer orchestrated a merger of Cabela and Bass Pro Shops that destroyed a town in Nebraska had few equals in broadcast news as a critique of financialization's impact on neighborhoods and local business. Those are the kind of stories and kind of moments that are going to appeal to a lot of people, because many of us are sensing that the current orthodoxy is leading to more centralization, a greater loss of jobs and community assets, a closure of small businesses, all things that started to become exacerbated during the pandemic. Let me know in the chat in the comments if you agree. Someone speaking out on behalf of those issues is going to reach a broad audience, and it's interesting to see that someone that speaks out on those issues is ultimately extracted from Fox News. In the past year, Carlson also broke with the Washington political establishment to express skepticism about the US sending tens of billions of dollars in weapons and security assistance to Ukraine. He has questioned the prevailing insistence that the war is not a proxy battle between superpowers and that the United States is not at war with Russia. The television host censured the Biden administration after comments made by the president that indicated the goal of US involvement in Ukraine was regime change, which White House spokespeople then had to walk back. Carlson repeatedly invited on independent journalists and commentators critical of American military adventurism. Political commentator Jimmy Dore told Fox News viewers, "Your enemy is not China, your enemy is not Russia, your enemy is the military-industrial complex." And it's amazing to see those kind of voices on Fox News. You're unlikely to see those kind of voices on Fox News after the departure of Tucker. So who benefits from that? Did you see Tucker Carlson asking outright, what is the intention in this war? When would it end? When do we know that the objectives have been met? Is there a limit to the amount of expenditure? And I would add to that, is there a democratic process? Could we vote for how much aid to spend? Could we simultaneously be pursuing a diplomatic solution? Those things didn't used to be called right-wing talking points. And the fact that they suddenly are suggests that there's something bigger happening in the culture than just, I don't know, Tucker Carlson is a terrible guy. While Carlson largely dedicated his show to criticizing Democratic lawmakers, he also excoriated the failures of Republican leadership. In one recent instance, Carlson aimed his signature incredulity at Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell's comment that the most important thing going on in the world right now is the war in Ukraine. No, the most important thing going on in the world right now is the state of your country, the one you're supposed to run, the people you're supposed to represent, whose lives you're supposed to care about, the ones who can't buy food or gas, the people overdosing on fentanyl, he said. The fact that that voice is reaching a large audience, for me, is encouraging and shows that there are people that care about issues that are ultimately about the failing social fabric of America. If the mainstream media, as represented by CNN and MSNBC, are not willing to carry those messages, are not willing to go against corporate interests on the issues just listed in that one statement, then I think it's not only likely, but beneficial that voices from elsewhere take up that cause. That ain't the fault of the populist right. That is the failure of the neoliberal left. Liberal media outlets like The Guardian scolded Carlson for his coverage of the Ukraine conflict, demanding to know who the host was really rooting for, which just sounds like old school, "you're not a patriot" type stuff that during the Iraq conflict would have been right, the left, surely. A chorus of op-eds on Monday cheered his ouster and the move to rescue his very impressionable audience from dangerous rhetoric. Baked into that statement, of course, is the ongoing assumption that you are stupid, that you can't make decisions from yourself, that you need didactic pedagogy instead of informed news giving you as balanced an opinion as possible. And of course, Tucker Carlson opined, and of course he had a perspective, but often, frequently, it was at odds with the establishment. People don't want to be spoken down to like children anymore. I believe people want to be given the information, given the chance to have a conversation, and potentially form new alliances that might be surprising. But cable news may struggle to find an entertainer equally skilled at skewering comfortable pieties on the left and right. So there you are. While you have a White House press dinner that celebrates the cozy relationship between the state and the media, you are ousting simultaneously significant and somewhat radical voices from the mainstream. Don't be surprised that there's room in the information age for anti-establishment narratives, that there's room for radical voices, that there's essentially room for change. When Tucker Carlson says in that video, the old orthodoxies are dying, he's absolutely right. There's a clear choice that has to be made. Do you empower communities to live differently and democratically, or do you double down on centralization by creating conflict and conflagration? It's clear that the latter has been chosen, and it's clear that the former is what's required. Voices like Tucker Carlson's are facilitating the potential for a different type of government, even if there are cultural issues on which you hugely disagree. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at either of these two. Turn on the notification bell and subscribe right now. But more important than any of that, please stay free.